My daughter called me a distant relative and didn't invite me to her fancy birthday party. I came anyway, bringing a gift. What I gave her made her leave her own party in tears. That night, Betrayal got what it deserved. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. My reading glasses slipped down my nose as the numbers blurred together. $15,347. That's what I'd spent on Leona last month alone. The calculator's display mocked me from the kitchen table, surrounded by neat stacks of bank statements and receipts. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I kept the mug close anyway. Steam no longer rose from its surface, just like the warmth had long since left my relationship with my daughter. I adjusted my glasses and reached for another statement when the phone shattered the evening quiet. "Dad?" Leona's voice hit me before I'd even finished saying hello. "What is it, dear?" "I need $15,000 for my birthday celebration at Golden Palm." The pen in my hand stopped moving. 15,000 for one evening? All my friends are having their celebrations there. Steven says it's the perfect venue, and you know how important this is to me. Her tone carried that familiar mix of sweetness and demand that had worked on me for decades. I stood up, the chair scraping against the kitchen floor. "Leona, that's absolutely ridiculous. When did birthdays become investment opportunities?" "Don't be dramatic, Dad. It's not just a birthday party. It's about maintaining appearances, staying connected with my network. These relationships matter for my styling business." My jaw clenched as I stared at the bills scattered across my table. Business? What business? The same business that had netted her maybe $3,000 last year while I covered her mortgage, car payments, and credit cards. "Your network." The words tasted bitter. "Tell me, when was the last time this network helped you pay a single bill?" "That's not fair." Her voice shifted, developing that whining edge I'd grown to despise. "You know how competitive the industry is? I'm building something here." "Building what exactly? A collection of expensive dinners funded by your father?" Silence stretched between us like a canyon. I could hear Steven's voice in the background, probably coaching her through this conversation from their couch. The couch I'd helped them buy. "Look, I thought you'd be supportive. I'm finally making connections that could lead to real opportunities." "Real opportunities." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Leona, I'm 68 years old. I've been retired for 3 years, and I'm not an endless bank account." "You're being mean." Now came the tears. I could hear them forming in her voice. Mom would have understood the importance of this. The mention of Margaret hit like a physical blow. My wife would have understood all right. She would have understood that our daughter had become exactly what we'd feared: entitled, manipulative, and completely detached from financial reality. "Don't!" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't you dare bring your mother into this." I just thought, "No, you didn't think. You never think beyond your own immediate wants." My free hand gripped the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. $15,000 for a party. Do you have any idea what that represents? It represents my father caring about my happiness. It represents 3 months of mortgage payments for most people. It represents a year of groceries. It represents... I stopped myself before the rage took over completely. It represents you seeing me as nothing more than a source of money. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had gone cold. "Fine. I'll figure something else out. Thanks for nothing." The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry wasp. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the kitchen wall where Margaret's cross-stitch reading, "Bless This Home," had hung for 20 years. Slowly, I walked back to the table and sat down among the evidence of my financial generosity. Statement after statement, receipt after receipt, all documenting the same pattern: Kenneth Roberts, the reliable provider. The endless well of resources for a daughter who'd never learned the value of money. My coffee cup sat exactly where I'd left it, a ring of condensation marking its place on the wood table. I picked it up and took a sip of the cold liquid, letting its bitterness match my mood. $15,000. For one night. I gathered the statements into a pile, each piece of paper representing another instance where I'd said yes when I should have said no. The numbers told a story I'd been too blind to read. $38,000 last year, $41,000 the year before that. And it was only getting worse. The kitchen felt smaller now, filled with the weight of realization. Outside, A neighbor's dog barked twice and fell silent. Inside, I sat surrounded by the mathematical proof of my daughter's indifference, wondering when love had become nothing more than a bank routing number. Sleep had been impossible. I'd spent the night pacing between the kitchen and living room, Margaret's words echoing in my memory like a broken record. Don't spoil her, Kenneth. Love isn't the same as enabling. How many times had she said that? How many times had I dismissed her concerns as motherly worry? The afternoon sun slanted through the living room windows, highlighting dust motes that danced in the air like tiny accusations. I'd tried reading the newspaper after lunch, but the words kept blurring together. Financial advice columns seemed to mock me from the business section. Margaret's photograph smiled at me from the mantelpiece, her eyes holding that familiar mixture of love and exasperation. I walked over and picked up the silver frame, running my thumb across the glass. "You tried to warn me," I whispered to her image. "You said I was creating a monster." The house felt too quiet, too empty of everything except my growing understanding of what I'd done. I set the photograph down and moved to the coffee table, where I'd spread out every bank statement from the past 2 years. Numbers don't lie, and these numbers told the brutal truth about my relationship with Leona. Car repairs, $4,300. Emergency dental work, $1,200. Temporary loan for business equipment, $6,500. Vacation to Hawaii with Stephen, $8,900. My engineer's mind calculated automatically, $97,436 in 2 years, nearly $50,000 annually in what she called help. And I now recognized as financial life support for 2 adults who'd never learned to swim in the real world. I walked to the kitchen and poured fresh coffee, my movements automatic while my thoughts churned. The same table where she demanded $15,000 now held a different kind of evidence: a calculator, a notepad, and 24 months of financial statements. Margaret's voice seemed to whisper from the walls themselves. "She needs to learn, Kenneth. Consequences teach what comfort cannot." Standing at the counter, I remembered the specific conversation we'd had after Leona's wedding. Margaret had suggested we give them a modest gift for the down payment instead of buying the house outright. "Let them earn it," she'd said. "Let them feel invested in their own success." But Leona had cried, Stephen had looked so defeated, and I'd written the check anyway, telling myself I was helping them get started, not enabling them to never start at all. The coffee grew cold in my hands as I stood there, finally seeing the pattern clearly. Every gift had made the next request easier. Every yes had trained them to expect another yes. Every time I'd rescued them from their own poor decisions, I'd prevented them from learning how to make better ones. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls today, no requests, no manipulation disguised as affection. Just silence. And in that silence, a terrible understanding grew. I returned to the living room and sat in my recliner, surrounded by the paper trail of my misguided generosity. Margaret would have stopped this years ago. She would have drawn lines, set boundaries, demanded accountability. But Margaret was gone, and I'd spent 3 years trying to be both parents to a daughter who'd stopped needing parents the moment she realized she could have a bank account instead. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 3:30. Somewhere across town, Leona was probably planning her $15,000 party, confident that her father's guilt and love would eventually overrule his common sense. Not this time. The newspaper lay folded beside my breakfast plate, headlines promising more inflation and economic uncertainty. I'd slept better last night, the kind of exhausted sleep that comes after difficult decisions. My coffee tasted normal again, not bitter with resentment. The morning had passed quietly. I'd watered Margaret's roses, organized my workshop, and even considered calling Jerry Evans to see if he wanted to grab lunch later. For the first time in 2 days, the weight in my chest had lifted slightly. When the phone rang, I expected confrontation. Leona calling to argue, Stephen trying to smooth things over, maybe even tears and accusations. Instead, I heard something I hadn't heard in months, genuine sweetness in my daughter's voice. "Dad, I have good news." I sat up straighter in my chair. "Oh? I canceled the party at Golden Palm. You were right. It was too extravagant. I've decided to keep my birthday celebration small and intimate instead." The words hit me like an unexpected gift. I felt my shoulders relax, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "Really? What changed your mind?" "I thought about what you said, about mom, about being responsible. Her voice carried a warmth I remembered from years ago, before the requests and demands had replaced normal conversation. I realized I was being selfish. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. Something in her tone, too practiced, too smooth, sent a small warning signal through my engineer's brain. But the relief was stronger than the doubt. I'm proud of you, Leona. That took courage. I just want to focus on what's really important. Family. Maybe we could have a quiet dinner instead? Just you, me, and Steven? The offer felt like redemption. After 2 days of questioning every choice I'd made as a father, here was evidence that maybe, somehow, I'd managed to teach her something valuable after all. I'd love that. I'll still get you something special for your birthday, of course. Nothing extravagant, but something meaningful. You don't have to do anything fancy, Dad. Just having you there will be enough. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with a lightness I hadn't felt since Monday evening. Outside the window, Mrs. Henderson was walking her small terrier, and the normalcy of the scene felt like a blessing. I reached for a notepad and wrote, "Leona's gift, jewelry store, Friday," in my careful handwriting. Maybe something from her mother's collection, or a new piece that she could pass down to her own daughter someday. The numbers on the bank statement seemed less accusatory now. Maybe they represented investment rather than waste. Maybe all those years of support had finally taught her the difference between want and need. But as I folded the statements and put them away, a small voice in the back of my mind, the same voice that had made me a successful engineer by questioning every assumption, whispered a single word: verify. I pushed the thought aside. Sometimes a father has to choose between suspicion and hope. This time, I chose hope. The marble lobby echoed with my footsteps as I approached the safety deposit box counter. 27 years I'd been coming to this bank, and the staff still treated me with the same formal courtesy Margaret had always appreciated. "Mr. Roberts," the clerk nodded. "We rarely see you here anymore." "Special occasion," I replied, producing my key. "My daughter's birthday." The familiar ritual of dual keys, security protocols, and basement access felt like performing surgery. Everything precise, methodical, exactly as my engineer's mind preferred. The metal box slid open with its characteristic whisper, revealing treasures I hadn't touched since Margaret's funeral. Her jewelry box sat nestled among important documents, still wrapped in the blue velvet cloth she'd used to protect it. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the lid, releasing the faint scent of her perfume that somehow still clung to the fabric lining. There were her wedding rings, the pearl earrings from our 15th anniversary, the vintage brooch her grandmother had passed down. But beneath them all, wrapped in tissue paper like a sleeping secret, lay the piece I'd come for. The anniversary necklace caught the fluorescent light immediately. 29 diamonds set in platinum, each stone perfectly matched, the centerpiece a full carat that had cost me 3 months' salary back in 1995. Margaret had gasped when I'd presented it to her at the Pacific Club, her hand flying to her throat in that graceful gesture I'd loved so much. "Kenneth, it's magnificent," she'd whispered that night, tears making her eyes sparkle almost as brilliantly as the diamonds themselves. I'd been so proud watching her wear it, seeing other couples notice, knowing I'd managed to give my wife something truly spectacular. Now, it would go to Leona. Family history, not just jewelry. Something with meaning beyond its monetary value, though the insurance appraisal had valued it at $18,000 just 2 years ago. I examined each diamond carefully, checking for chips or damage. Perfect condition, just as I'd expected. Margaret had worn this piece maybe 20 times in 30 years, treating it like the treasure it was. Leona would understand its significance. She had to. "Would you like our complimentary gift wrapping service?" the clerk asked when I returned to the main counter. "Please, it needs to look perfect." She wrapped it in elegant cream paper with a gold ribbon, the kind of presentation that whispered expensive taste rather than shouting it. I watched her work, imagining Leona's face when she opened it. The surprise, the recognition, maybe even tears when she realized what it meant. This wasn't about money. This was about legacy, about connection, about showing her that love could be expressed in ways that had nothing to do with bank balances or credit limits. Margaret's spirit would live on in this gift, passed from mother to daughter across the years. Walking back to my car with the wrapped box, I felt lighter than I had in days. Tomorrow I'd surprise her with it, maybe over coffee at her kitchen table. We'd talk about Margaret, about family, about what really mattered. Maybe this would be the moment she'd remember that her father was more than just a convenient ATM. The afternoon sun warmed my shoulders as I settled the gift box carefully on the passenger seat. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Her driveway sat empty, not even Steven's battered Honda in sight. I parked behind where Leona's car usually sat and walked toward the front door, the gift box tucked securely under my arm. The house looked abandoned. No lights, no signs of dinner preparation, nothing to suggest a family celebration was about to begin. The doorbell echoed hollowly inside. I waited, rang again, then checked my watch. 6 o'clock exactly, when normal families gathered for birthday dinners. I walked around the side of the house, peering through windows, confirming what I already suspected. Nobody home. "Kenneth!" Jerry's voice called from his yard next door. He emerged from behind a rosebush, garden hose still dripping in his hand. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you at the party?" The words hit me like ice water. "Party? What party?" Jerry's eyebrows shot up. "The birthday party. Golden Palm. Leona's been talking about it for weeks. They left about 2 hours ago with carloads of decorations and flowers." My grip tightened on the gift box. "That's impossible. She told me she canceled everything." "Canceled?" Jerry dropped the hose completely. "Kenneth, they've got 300 guests. Stephen was bragging about the band they hired, the special menu, must be costing a fortune. 300 guests. The number hammered in my skull like a migraine. I stood there in my neighbor's yard, holding Margaret's anniversary necklace, while my daughter celebrated her birthday with 300 people who apparently rated higher than her own father. I must have misunderstood, I managed, backing toward my car. Jerry was still talking, something about ice sculptures and champagne fountains, but his words became white noise. I reached my car and fumbled with the door handle, needing to escape before my composure cracked completely. The gift box felt heavier now, weighted with different meaning. I placed it on the passenger seat and started the engine, Jerry's confused expression visible in my rearview mirror as I drove away. I made it 3 blocks before pulling into an empty grocery store parking lot, hands shaking too badly to navigate traffic safely. The engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound in my suddenly airless world. Distant relative. That's what I was to her, someone peripheral enough to exclude from the guest list, but essential enough to fund the entire spectacle. 300 people celebrating with my money while I sat at home like a fool, believing her lies about quiet family dinners. My phone buzzed with a banking app notification. Automatic transfer completed. $1,500 moved from my account to hers, part of the monthly allowance I'd set up years ago. Money flowing to fund my own humiliation. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, feeling something cold and methodical awakening in my chest. The hurt was transforming into something sharper, more focused. An engineer's mind that had spent 40 years solving complex problems was beginning to see this situation as just another system that needed correction. Margaret's necklace sat beside me in its elegant wrapping, a symbol of everything I'd believed about family, love, and respect. But symbols meant nothing when the person receiving them saw you as nothing more than a convenient source of funding. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking application, the one Leona had never seen, never asked about, probably never imagined existed. Joint accounts, authorized transfers, emergency access codes, all the financial infrastructure I'd built to take care of my family now revealing itself as something else entirely. Control. The same methodical thinking that had made me successful as an engineer was now calculating possibilities, examining variables, testing solutions. Leona wanted to play games with money? She'd chosen to exclude the one person who actually controlled the money. I started the car and pulled back into traffic, driving toward home with a new sense of purpose. The gift box remained on the passenger seat, but its meaning had changed completely. Tomorrow, there would be consequences. My computer hummed to life with the same reliable efficiency it had shown for the past 5 years. The familiar login screen appeared, and I typed my credentials with steady fingers, each keystroke deliberate and purposeful. Behind me, Margaret's anniversary necklace sat in its elegant wrapping, a reminder of intentions that had died 30 minutes ago. The banking portal opened like a door to possibilities I'd never considered. 43 years of maintaining these accounts, of being the responsible provider, had given me administrative access to every financial connection between my daughter and security. joint checking account, authorized user privileges, emergency credit lines, all of it flowing through systems I controlled but had never weaponized, until now. I clicked through each account methodically, my engineer's mind cataloging the scope of Leona's financial dependence. Her checking account, my money flowing in, her expenses flowing out. Savings account, emergency funds I'd established for her stability. Credit cards, 3 different cards where I was the primary holder, and she was merely an authorized user. The realization struck me with cold satisfaction. She had no independent financial identity. Every transaction, every purchase, every expression of her lifestyle flowed through accounts that existed only because I allowed them to exist. I opened the account permissions page and paused, cursor hovering over the first revocation button. This wasn't anger anymore. It was arithmetic. If I was a distant relative, then my money was equally distant. Click. Checking account access revoked. Click. Savings account authorization removed. Click. Credit card 1. Authorized user status terminated. Click. Credit card 2. Access denied. Click. Credit card 3. Privileges suspended. Each digital severing felt like cutting puppet strings I'd never realized I was holding. The screen displayed confirmation messages in sterile banking language. Changes will take effect immediately. All payment methods linked to removed user will be declined. Account holder retains full administrative control. My phone buzzed. A text from the bank's automated system. Important account changes made. Contact us if unauthorized. I smiled grimly. Entirely authorized. I dialed the after-hours customer service line, navigating through menu options with practiced efficiency. First National Bank, this is Marcus. How can I help you? This is Kenneth Roberts. Account number 447892215. I've just made some account changes and need to confirm immediate card cancellations. Certainly, Mr. Roberts. I see the changes here. Are you sure you want to revoke all access for Mrs. Phillips? This will block all her current payment methods. Completely certain. Effective immediately. And the credit card cancellations? All of them. I want new cards issued only in my name, different numbers, expedited delivery. That's quite comprehensive, sir. May I ask if there's been a security breach? I paused, looking at the gift box on my desk. You could say that. Someone has been using my resources without proper authorization. After confirming the changes, I hung up and sat back in my chair. The computer screen still glowed with account summaries, but now they told a different story. Kenneth Roberts, account holder, full control. Leona. Phillips, no access, no authorization, no financial identity. I walked upstairs to my bedroom and opened the closet Margaret had organized so carefully years ago. My best suit hung exactly where she'd placed it. The navy wool she'd always said made me look distinguished. I dressed methodically, crisp white shirt, silver tie, polished shoes, preparing for what felt less like a confrontation than a presentation of findings. In the mirror, I saw a man I barely recognized. Not the enabling father who'd written check after check, but someone harder, more focused. An engineer who'd identified a problem and implemented a solution. Margaret's gift box waited on the dresser. I picked it up, feeling its weight differently now. This wasn't a peace offering anymore. It was evidence. The valet attendants wore crisp uniforms and moved with practiced efficiency, parking luxury cars worth more than most people's annual salaries. I handed over my keys and walked through the restaurant's entrance, gift box tucked under my arm like a briefcase full of secrets. Golden Palm lived up to its reputation for ostentation, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and enough gold leaf to finance a small country's infrastructure. The maitre d' approached with the kind of smile reserved for people who looked like they belonged here. "Excuse me, sir, are you here for the Phillips celebration?" I'm the birthday girl's father. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to surprised deference. "Of course! Right this way, Mr. Roberts. Mrs. Phillips didn't mention you'd be joining us." I followed him through the main dining room, toward a private section where the sounds of celebration grew louder with each step. Through an archway draped with white silk and gold ribbons, I could see the scope of my daughter's quiet family dinner. 300 people, maybe more. The space buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. A live jazz quartet played in one corner while waiters circulated with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. that probably cost more per bite than most people spend on entire meals. My engineer's mind automatically calculated costs as I surveyed the scene. Private room rental for this size, $15,000 minimum. Catering for 300 guests with premium menu, another $20,000. Bar service, music, flowers, decorations, easily $10,000 more. $45,000 for one evening's entertainment. $45,000 of my money spent to celebrate my exclusion from my own daughter's life. I moved through the crowd, noting how few faces I recognized despite years of supporting Leona's social ambitions. These people, her network, her connections, her priority relationships, looked right through me. An elderly man in an expensive suit, invisible among the younger crowd she'd cultivated with my financial backing. At the head of the room, beneath a cascade of white orchids and golden balloons, I spotted my target. Leona held court at a central table, resplendent in a silver gown that caught the light like armor. Stephen sat beside her, nodding along to conversations about people and places I'd never heard of despite funding their lifestyle. She looked radiant, happy, completely comfortable in her role as the center of attention. The birthday girl, surrounded by hundreds of friends, basking in celebration I'd made possible through decades of financial support, none of whom were her father. I adjusted my grip on the gift box and began walking toward her table, weaving between servers and guests, carrying Margaret's necklace toward the daughter who'd relegated me to distant relative status. The jazz music continued playing, but I could hear something else now, the sound of consequences approaching. Leona's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips when she saw me approaching. Color drained from her face, as if someone had suddenly turned down the lighting, though the crystal chandelier above us continued blazing with the same expensive brilliance. "Dad?" The word came out as barely a whisper. How did you know about—" Stephen immediately looked away, suddenly fascinated by the flower arrangements, his cowardice transparent even in this crowded room. Several nearby guests turned toward us, sensing the shift in energy that happens when family drama intrudes on celebration. "Happy birthday, sweetheart!" I kept my voice warm, conversational, the tone of a loving father arriving at his daughter's party. "Quite a gathering you've put together here." Her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for escape routes or explanations. I can explain." "No need to explain. It's beautiful." I gestured toward the elaborate decorations, the champagne service, the 300 guests enjoying themselves at my expense. Very impressive for someone who canceled her birthday celebration. The nearby conversations began dying down as people realized they were witnessing something more interesting than small talk about mutual acquaintances and business ventures. "Dad, please, let me explain." Leona's voice carried that familiar wheedling tone she used when caught in contradictions. "This isn't really a birthday party. It's more like a networking event for my business." "Ah," I nodded, understanding. "A networking event. How enterprising of you." She seemed to relax slightly, misinterpreting my calm tone as acceptance. "Exactly. It's really more about professional connections than personal celebration. You understand, don't you? It's not the kind of thing for family," I suggested helpfully. "For distant relatives," she finished, the words slipping out before her brain could stop them. There it was. The phrase I'd needed to hear, delivered in front of witnesses, spoken with the casual cruelty that revealed exactly how she saw our relationship. Distant relatives. After 42 years of love, support, and sacrifice, I'd been categorized with the same consideration given to second cousins and family friends. Several guests had stopped their conversations entirely now, wine glasses suspended in air as they watched this family interaction unfold. Stephen continued studying the orchids with desperate intensity, as if flowers might provide escape from the accountability he'd spent years avoiding. "Distant relatives," I repeated, letting the words settle in the suddenly quiet space around our table. "That's an interesting way to put it." Leona's eyes widened as she realized what she'd said, how it sounded, especially in front of all these people whose respect she valued so highly. "I didn't mean it like that, Dad. I just meant—" "Oh, I think you meant it exactly like that." My smile remained pleasant, paternal, while inside, I felt the last lock clicking into place. "And you know what? You're absolutely right." I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone, making a show of checking the time as if I had somewhere important to be. Well, since I'm just a distant relative, I suppose I should let you get back to your networking. I paused, looking at her expectant face, then added with quiet satisfaction, "Oh, and happy birthday from your distant father." The gift box remained tucked under my arm, its contents suddenly perfect for what came next. Something in my expression must have shifted, because the defensive panic in Leona's eyes suddenly gave way to confused hope. I let my shoulders relax, allowed a small smile to cross my face, the kind of paternal forgiveness she'd learned to count on over the years. "You know what? It's your birthday." I brought the gift box from behind my back, holding it where she could see the elegant cream wrapping and gold ribbon. "I didn't come here to argue. I came here to give you something special." The transformation in her face was immediate and complete. Relief flooded her features as she recognized the familiar pattern. Father gets upset, daughter apologizes, father forgives, everyone moves on. The script we'd followed for decades, written in my checkbook and sealed with my indulgence. "Oh, Dad." She reached toward the box with trembling hands. "I knew you'd understand. I knew you wouldn't stay angry on my birthday." "This belonged to your mother." I opened the box slowly, ceremonially, letting the restaurant's crystal chandelier catch the diamonds. The necklace blazed like captured starlight, 29 stones set in platinum, the centerpiece a full carat that had cost me 3 months' salary 30 years ago. Leona gasped, her hand flying to her throat in the exact gesture Margaret had made that night at the Pacific Club. "Mom's anniversary necklace. Dad, I can't believe. I've been waiting for this moment my whole life." "She wore it to our 20th anniversary dinner," I said softly, holding the necklace up so the light danced through every stone. "Right here in Los Angeles, at a restaurant much like this one. She was so beautiful that night, so happy." Other couples kept staring at her, wondering who the radiant woman in the diamonds was. Tears streamed down Leona's cheeks as she reached for the necklace, her fingers almost touching the platinum chain. Around us, the nearby guests had stopped their conversations entirely, drawn into what appeared to be a heartwarming family moment. A father presenting his deceased wife's jewelry to their daughter on her birthday. "This is the most meaningful gift you could ever give me," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'm so sorry about what I said earlier, about distant relatives. I didn't mean it, Dad. You're everything to me. You've always been everything to me." Perfect. She was completely vulnerable now, stripped of defenses, overwhelmed with gratitude and sentiment. 300 witnesses to her joy, her tears, her public declaration that I was everything to her. Everything except close enough to invite to her birthday party. I let her fingers almost touch the diamonds, watched her lean forward in anticipation, felt the weight of every person at nearby tables holding their breath for this touching family reconciliation. Then I snapped the jewelry box closed. The click of the box closing echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Leona's hands froze in midair, still reaching for the necklace that had just vanished from her grasp. Confusion replaced joy on her face as she looked from my hands to my eyes, searching for an explanation that made sense. Actually, I changed my mind. I slipped the jewelry box back into my jacket pocket with deliberate calm. "I have a much better gift for you, daughter, something more appropriate for distant relatives." "Better? Dad, what do you mean?" Her voice carried the first note of panic, though she was still trying to process what had just happened. "Why did you take it away?" I retrieved my phone from my jacket pocket, opened the banking application I'd used just 2 hours earlier, and turned the screen toward her. "I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Independence." Her eyes darted across the screen, taking in account names, zero balances, and a simple message repeated across multiple entries. "Access denied." The color drained from her face as understanding began to dawn. "What is this?" she whispered. "I've blocked your access to all my accounts. Checking, savings, credit lines, everything." I kept my voice conversational, educational, the tone I might use to explain a bridge design to an interested student. "Every card in your wallet, every automatic payment, every safety net you've taken for granted, all of it discontinued as of 6:30 this evening." Leona fumbled for her own phone with shaking hands, her fingers sliding across the screen as she opened her banking app. I watched her face as she encountered the first transaction declined message, then the second, then the systematic rejection of every financial connection she'd assumed was permanent. "This isn't possible," she breathed, trying different cards, different accounts, her panic building with each failure. You can't just, I need these accounts. How am I supposed to? Stephen finally found his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. Kenneth, surely we can discuss this reasonably. There must be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. I pocketed my phone and straightened my tie, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced since solving my most complex engineering problems. This is exactly what I intended. Distant relatives don't fund family celebrations after all. The murmurs began then, spreading outward from our table like ripples on water. 300 guests who had come for entertainment were getting more than they'd bargained for. A front row seat to financial devastation, family collapse, and the precise moment when consequences arrived to collect their debt. Leona looked around wildly, as if the elegant restaurant might offer some escape from the mathematical certainty of her situation. But there was nowhere to run from basic arithmetic. A $45,000 party, $0 in accessible funds, and a room full of witnesses to her complete financial helplessness. Dad, please, she begged, her voice breaking. I didn't mean what I said. You know I didn't mean it. I looked at her calmly, this daughter who had just discovered what independence actually costs. Oh, but you did mean it. I adjusted my jacket calmly while Leona descended into full panic beside me. You meant it exactly the way it sounded. Distant relatives, people peripheral to your real life, useful for funding, but not worth including. She was frantically swiping through her phone now, trying every financial app, every backup option, discovering the thoroughness of my preparation. Stephen sat frozen in his chair, finally understanding the scope of their dependency and his complete powerlessness to fix any of it. How could you do this to me? You've humiliated me in front of everyone. Her voice rose high enough that conversations throughout the restaurant began stopping. Even the jazz quartet seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. I've done nothing to you that you didn't do to yourself. I straightened the napkin on the table, brushing imaginary crumbs from the white tablecloth with the same methodical attention I'd once given to technical blueprints. You chose to lie about canceling the party. You chose to exclude your father while spending his money. You chose to call me a distant relative in front of 300 strangers. The maitre d' appeared at my elbow, his professional composure barely concealing alarm at the scene unfolding at his establishment's most prominent table. Is everything all right here? Perhaps we could handle this matter more privately. Everything's fine, I assured him pleasantly. Just a family discussion about financial responsibility. I reached for Margaret's necklace box, patting it safely in my jacket. My daughter is learning some valuable lessons about independence tonight. Leona grabbed my arm desperately. Dad, I'm begging you. I'll pay you back. I'll get a real job. I'll do whatever you want. What I want is for you to handle this situation yourself. You're a grown woman who wanted to celebrate without her father's interference. Well, now you can handle the consequences without his money. I gathered my car keys from the table, nodded politely to the guests at nearby tables who were watching with uncomfortable fascination. Several of them looked away quickly, embarrassed to be witnessing such intimate family devastation. Enjoy your independence, Leona. You've worked very hard to earn it. Stephen finally spoke, his voice cracking with desperation. Kenneth? Wait, how is she supposed to pay for all this? I paused at the edge of their table, looking back at the two people who had built their entire lifestyle on my generosity, while excluding me from their actual lives. That's not my problem anymore. Distant relatives don't concern themselves with such details. Walking toward the restaurant exit, I could hear Leona's voice rising behind me, alternating between sobs and frantic phone calls to banks that would only confirm what I'd already told her. The party continued around her collapsed world. 300 people who had come for celebration, now witnessing the precise moment when 30 years of financial dependence revealed its true cost. The valet brought my car with the same efficient service he'd provided an hour earlier, though I noticed him glancing back toward the restaurant with curious concern. Through the windows, I could see Leona still at the head table, Stephen beside her, both of them drowning in an ocean of their own creation. I drove home through the quiet streets of Los Angeles, Margaret's necklace safe in my jacket pocket, thinking about the mathematical beauty of perfect justice. 43 years of marriage, 30 years of supporting an ungrateful daughter, and finally, one evening where the numbers balanced exactly as they should. Sometimes the most elegant solutions are also the simplest ones. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.